Marcus Wilson stood among the crowd of tourists outside Buckingham Palace. The sun was hot that day in London. Marcus was 32 years old and came all the way from Ohio in America. This was his first trip to another country, and he was very excited. He waited for hours to see the famous royal guards with their big black furry hats and bright red coats. They looked just like in the pictures, Marcus thought as he watched the guard standing still as a statue. The guard's name was James Thornton. He was 25 years old and had been a royal guard for 3 years now. James was very proud of his job. Every morning, he put on his uniform with care and stood at his post with honor. Marcus pushed his way through the crowd to get closer. He wanted a better look at the guard who did not move, blink, or speak. Many tourists were taking pictures. Some were trying to make the guard smile or move. But James stood still, looking straight ahead like he was trained to do. "I wonder if anything can make these guys move," Marcus said to a woman next to him. She smiled politely and moved away. Marcus had always been known as a joker back home. His friends often told him his jokes went too far, but he never listened. He liked making people laugh, and he liked being the center of attention even more. That morning, before coming to the palace, Marcus had gone to a small shop. He bought a bright red baseball cap that said London on it, but there was something else in his pocket too. It was a small bottle of hot sauce that he had made himself. He called it Devil's Breath because it was so spicy it could make anyone sweat and cry. Marcus had packed it carefully in his suitcase and brought it all the way from Ohio. "This will make a great video for my friends back home," Marcus thought as he took out his phone. He started recording a video of himself standing near the guard. "Hey everyone, watch this. I'm going to see if I can make this guard move. No one has ever done it before." While James stood at his post, he was thinking about his day. That morning, his commander had warned all the guards to be extra careful. "There have been more tourist problems lately," the commander had said. "Remember your training. Do not react, no matter what." James took this warning seriously. He had never broken his stance, not even when tourists shouted or waved their hands in his face. The sun was very hot that day. James could feel sweat running down his back under the heavy red coat, but his face showed nothing. He looked straight ahead, his eyes not focusing on any one person in the crowd. This was his duty, and he did it perfectly. Marcus moved even closer to James. He was only a few feet away now. Some people in the crowd noticed what Marcus was doing and started watching him instead of the guard. A few took out their phones to record. They thought something funny might happen. "This is going to be epic," Marcus whispered to himself as he put his hand in his pocket. His fingers wrapped around the small bottle of hot sauce. He had tested this sauce on his friends before. It was so hot that his friend Tom had to drink a whole gallon of milk afterward. Marcus smiled as he remembered how funny that had been. James saw Marcus from the corner of his eye. Years of training had taught him to be aware of everything around him without showing it. He noticed Marcus moving closer than tourists were allowed. He noticed the strange smile on Marcus's face, and he noticed when Marcus's hand went into his pocket. But James did not move. He did not change his expression. He was a royal guard, and he would act like one no matter what. What happened next would change both their lives forever. Marcus pulled the small bottle of hot sauce out of his pocket. His heart beat fast with excitement. The crowd around him grew bigger as more tourists stopped to see what was happening. Some people looked worried. Others smiled, thinking it might be funny. No one tried to stop him. "Watch this," Marcus said to a teenage boy next to him. "I'm going to make history today." The boy looked confused but kept watching. Marcus opened the cap of his Devil's Breath hot sauce. The strong smell made his eyes water a little. This sauce was his special recipe. He had added extra hot peppers that he grew in his backyard. It was so hot that even a tiny drop could make a grown man cry. James stood still at his post. He could see Marcus from the corner of his eye. Something was not right. The man was too close now, closer than tourists were allowed to be. James wanted to call for help, but he could not speak or move while on duty. These were the strict rules he had to follow. So he kept looking straight ahead, his face showing no worry. The crowd grew quiet as Marcus raised his hand. Then, in one quick move, he pointed the bottle at James and squeezed hard. A stream of bright red sauce shot through the air. Time seemed to slow down for James. He saw the red liquid coming toward his face, but could not move to avoid it. Most of the hot sauce hit James's uniform collar, making a big red stain on the bright red coat. But some drops landed on his cheek and near his eye. The pain was instant and terrible. It felt like his skin was on fire. The sauce was much hotter than any normal hot sauce. It burned like acid. A gasp went through the crowd. No one had expected this. Taking funny pictures with the guards was one thing. Throwing hot sauce at them was something very different. It was an attack on a soldier doing his duty. Inside, James wanted to scream from the pain. His eye was burning badly. His training told him to stay still, but the pain was almost too much to bear. His face twitched slightly, and a single tear ran down his cheek, not from emotion but from his eye, trying to wash away the burning sauce. He moved. "Did you see that?" He moved. Marcus shouted with joy. He turned to the crowd, waiting for them to laugh and cheer. But no one was laughing. Instead, people looked shocked and angry. Some were backing away. Others were pointing and talking in low, upset voices. A woman in the front row pulled out a tissue and stepped forward, wanting to help James. But another tourist stopped her. "You can't touch him," the man said. "It's against the rules. We need to call for help instead." The burning on James's face got worse with each second. He had been stung by bees, broken bones, and gone through tough military training. But this pain was different. His training had never prepared him for this kind of attack. Still, he did not run or cry out. He stood his ground, though his body shook slightly from the effort. Marcus started to realize that something was wrong. The crowd was not cheering for his joke. Instead, people were looking at him with anger and disgust. Some were pointing their phones at him now, recording his face instead of the guard. A woman was on her phone, clearly calling for help. "It was just a joke," Marcus said, his voice less confident now. "It's not that bad. The sauce isn't dangerous." But he knew that wasn't true. His devil's breath sauce was made with some of the hottest peppers in the world. It could cause serious pain and even damage if it got in someone's eyes. 2 police officers who patrolled the palace grounds saw the commotion and started moving quickly toward the scene. They had also seen what happened on the security cameras that watched the area at all times. James blinked rapidly, trying to clear his vision. The pain was getting worse, spreading across his face. He knew he needed medical help, but he would not leave his post until properly relieved. That was his duty, and he took it seriously. But something inside him had changed. For the first time in his career as a royal guard, James was finding it hard to control his emotions. He was not just in pain. He was angry. The crowd grew larger as word spread about what had happened. People pushed to get a better view. Some were still taking pictures, but now they were taking pictures of Marcus, not James. They wanted to remember the face of the man who had done such a mean thing. Officer Patel was the first police officer to reach the scene. She was short but strong, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind her came Officer Jenkins, a tall man with gray hair who had worked at the palace for 15 years. They moved quickly through the crowd. "Everyone step back, please," Officer Jenkins said in a loud, clear voice. "Give us some space." The crowd moved back, but not far. No one wanted to miss what would happen next. Officer Patel went straight to Marcus. "Sir, I need you to come with me," she said firmly. Her hand rested on her radio, ready to call for more help if needed. "It was just a joke," Marcus said again. His face had turned red with shame. He didn't look like a proud prankster anymore. He looked scared. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Attacking a member of the Queen's Guard is a serious offense. Officer Patel said. "It is not a joke." She took out her handcuffs. The metal clicked loudly as she opened them. Marcus looked around, hoping someone would help him or at least agree with him that this was all too serious for a little prank. But the faces in the crowd were not friendly. Even the teenage boy who had watched him earlier was shaking his head with disapproval. Meanwhile, Officer Jenkins approached James carefully. "Do you need medical attention, soldier?" he asked quietly, trying not to make a scene. James could not answer or move, but Jenkins could see the pain in his eyes. The skin around his eye was turning red and starting to swell. Jenkins spoke into his radio. "We need medical assistance at Post 3. Guard has been injured, but is maintaining position." Then he turned to face the crowd. "I need everyone to move back now. This area is being closed." Just then, something unexpected happened. A woman pushed through the crowd. She was small with short black hair and wore a bright blue dress. Her name was Emma Chen, a nurse from Singapore who was on vacation in London. She had been standing near the back of the crowd and had seen everything. "I'm a nurse," Emma said to Officer Jenkins. "I can help until the medical team arrives." She didn't wait for permission. She opened her purse and took out a small travel first aid kit. "I always carry this when I travel," she explained. Officer Jenkins looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Be quick," he said. "We have strict protocols here." Emma approached James carefully. "I'm going to help you," she said in a calm, professional voice. "The hot sauce needs to be cleaned off before it causes more damage. I won't touch you or interfere with your position." James couldn't respond, but his eyes showed he understood. Emma took out a small bottle of clean water and some cotton pads from her kit. With gentle, careful movements, she began to dab at the hot sauce on James's cheek, without touching his uniform or making him move. While Emma helped James, Officer Patel was dealing with Marcus. "Sir, you are under arrest for assaulting a member of the Queen's Guard," she said as she placed the handcuffs on his wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." Marcus couldn't believe this was happening. Just 30 minutes ago, he had been a happy tourist taking pictures. Now he was being arrested in a foreign country. "This can't be happening," he said. "It was just hot sauce. Hot sauce that could cause permanent eye damage." Emma called out without looking away from helping James. "This is capsaicin burn. It's serious. Your joke could have blinded him." The crowd had grown silent, watching the scene unfold. Children asked their parents questions in whispers. Tourists who had just arrived tried to understand what was happening, and everyone was filming with their phones. Marcus's face would soon be seen by millions of people around the world. As Officer Patel led Marcus away, he looked back at James one last time. The guard was still standing at his post, still doing his duty, despite everything. For the first time, Marcus felt real shame for what he had done. The palace medical team arrived 5 minutes later. They wore clean white uniforms and carried a large medical bag. The head doctor, Dr. Sarah Reynolds, took one look at James and knew this was serious. She had treated many guards over the years, but never for a hot sauce attack. "We need to get him to the medical room now," Dr. Reynolds said to Officer Jenkins. She turned to the guard commander who had just arrived. "Permission to remove Guard Thornton from his post for medical treatment." The commander, a serious man with a thick mustache, nodded quickly. "Permission granted." "Guard Williams," he called to another guard nearby. "Take Thornton's post immediately." For the first time since the attack, James was allowed to move. His legs felt stiff after standing still for so long. As he took his first step, the crowd broke into spontaneous applause. They clapped for his strength and duty. James kept his face serious, but inside he felt touched by their support. As James was led away by the medical team, Emma started to follow, still holding her first aid kit. Dr. Reynolds noticed her and stopped. "Who are you?" she asked, looking at Emma with suspicion. "I'm Emma Chen, a nurse from Singapore," Emma explained. I provided first aid until you arrived. Dr. Reynolds looked at James's face, seeing the careful cleaning Emma had done. You did good work, she said. A hot sauce could have caused much worse damage if left on the skin. She handed Emma her card. The palace will want to thank you properly. Please call this number tomorrow. Meanwhile, Marcus had been taken to a small police station inside the palace grounds. Few tourists knew this station existed. It was mainly used for security issues before people were transferred to regular police stations. Marcus sat on a hard chair while Officer Patel filled out paperwork. I want to call the American Embassy, Marcus said. His voice shook a little. He had watched enough TV shows to know this was what Americans were supposed to say when arrested in other countries. That is your right, Officer Patel said without looking up from her papers. You will be allowed to make that call. But first, I need to complete this report. Marcus looked around the small room. The walls were plain white with a single picture of the Queen. There was no window. It felt very different from the fancy palace rooms tourists got to see. This was the real working side of the palace, not meant for visitors. What's going to happen to me? Marcus asked. The reality of his situation was starting to sink in. He was arrested in a foreign country for attacking a royal guard. This was serious. You will be charged with assault and disorderly conduct, Officer Patel explained. Then you will appear before a magistrate who will decide your punishment. Punishment. Marcus's voice went up in fear, like jail. Officer Patel finally looked up at him. Her face was not unkind, but it was serious. That depends on many things. The severity of Guard Thornton's injuries, your behavior going forward, whether this is your first offense. Outside in the main palace grounds, the area around James's post had been roped off. The crowd had been moved back, but many people stayed, talking about what they had seen. Some were posting videos online. The story was already spreading. Emma sat on a bench nearby, still a bit shocked by what had happened. A palace staff member had brought her a cup of tea and a form to fill out as a witness. As she sipped the hot tea, her phone started buzzing with messages. Her friends back in Singapore had already seen videos of her helping the guard. You're famous, one message said. Emma shook her head. She didn't want to be famous. She had just done what any nurse would do when someone needed help. Inside the palace medical room, James sat very still as Dr. Reynolds examined his eye. The burning had lessened thanks to Emma's quick action, but his skin was still red and irritated. Will there be permanent damage? James asked. It was his first question since the attack. Dr. Reynolds shone a light in his eye, checking carefully. I don't think so, she said. You were lucky. If that sauce had gone directly into your eye, it could have been much worse. James nodded. He thought about Marcus and felt a mix of anger and pity. The man had probably ruined his own life for a few seconds of what he thought would be fame. By evening, the video of Marcus's attack on James had spread all over the internet. People around the world watched as the tourists squirted hot sauce at the royal guard. They saw James stand firm despite the pain. They saw Emma step forward to help. And they saw Marcus being led away in handcuffs. The comments online were not kind to Marcus. People called him hot sauce jerk and worse names. His full name and hometown in Ohio were quickly found and shared. Someone even found his social media pages and shared his photos. Within hours, everyone knew who Marcus Wilson was, but not in the way he had hoped. In a small hotel room near the palace, Emma sat on her bed watching the news on TV. Her face appeared on the screen as reporters told the story of the hero nurse who helped the royal guard. Her phone had not stopped ringing with calls from news stations wanting to talk to her. I just did what anyone would do, Emma told her sister on a video call. I don't understand why people think it's so special. Because most people would have just watched or filmed it on their phones, her sister explained. You actually did something to help. At the police station, Marcus was allowed to call the American Embassy. The embassy worker who answered sounded tired and not very surprised. Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think. the embassy worker said. American tourists getting in trouble for bothering the royal guards. Though the hot sauce is a new one. Will you help me get out of here? Marcus asked hopefully. We'll send someone to check on you and explain your rights, the worker said. But if you did what they say you did, there's not much we can do. You broke British law on British soil. Meanwhile, at the Palace Medical Center, James was finally allowed to go home. His eye and cheek were still red, but the burning had mostly stopped. A car was waiting to take him to his small apartment in London where he lived with his wife, Lisa. Lisa was waiting at the door when James arrived. She had seen the videos online and had been calling the palace all afternoon trying to find out if he was okay. I was so worried, she said, hugging him carefully to avoid touching his injured face. Are you really all right? I'll be fine, James said, but his voice sounded tired. The doctor says there won't be any permanent damage. Lisa led him to their small living room where their 5-year-old daughter, Sophia, was waiting. Sophia ran to her father, but stopped when she saw his red face. Daddy, does it hurt? She asked in a small voice. James picked her up and held her close. Not anymore, he said, though this wasn't completely true. He didn't want Sophia to worry. As James sat down with his family, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from his commander. The palace has released an official statement about today's incident. You handled it with honor. Take tomorrow off to recover. That night, as most of London slept, the story continued to spread around the world. News websites wrote articles with headlines like "Tourist Attacks Royal Guard" and "Hot Sauce Assault at Buckingham Palace." TV stations played the video over and over. Some focused on Marcus's attack. Others focused on Emma's kindness. Many praised James's strength and duty. In his cell at the police station, Marcus couldn't sleep. He thought about how a single bad decision had changed his life in just a few hours. His vacation was ruined. He might go to jail. And when he eventually went home to Ohio, everyone would know what he had done. Emma also had trouble sleeping that night. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications as more people found and followed her social media accounts. She turned it off and tried to rest, but her mind kept going back to the moment she saw the guard in pain and decided to help. And James, despite his exhaustion, lay awake beside his sleeping wife. His face still burned slightly, but that wasn't what kept him awake. He was thinking about what he would say if he ever met Marcus face to face, away from his post, without the rules that had kept him silent during the attack. Would he be angry? Would he forgive? James wasn't sure. The next morning, Marcus was taken to a bigger police station in central London. He wore the same clothes from yesterday, now wrinkled from sleeping in them. His face looked tired and worried as 2 officers led him through a back door to avoid the reporters waiting outside. A lawyer from the American embassy was there to meet him. Her name was Miss Taylor, a serious woman with glasses and gray hair. She did not smile when she shook Marcus's hand. I've reviewed your case, Ms. Taylor said when they were alone in a small room. You're in a difficult position, Mr. Wilson. The evidence against you is very clear. Multiple videos show you attacking the guard. It wasn't an attack, Marcus tried to explain. It was supposed to be funny. Ms. Taylor looked at him over her glasses. The British legal system doesn't see it that way. Assaulting a member of the Queen's Guard is a serious offense. It's like attacking a police officer in America. Marcus sank lower in his chair. What should I do? I recommend you plead guilty and show real remorse, Ms. Taylor said. It's your best chance for a lighter sentence. At the same time, Emma was having breakfast at her hotel when a palace worker arrived with a letter. It was an official invitation to meet with a royal aide that afternoon. The palace wanted to thank her properly for helping James. Emma read the letter twice, not quite believing it. This is too much, she said to herself. All I did was clean hot sauce off someone's face. Emma's phone rang again. It was another news station wanting an interview. This time, instead of saying no, Emma thought for a moment. Maybe she could use all this attention for something good. Yes, I'll do the interview, she told the reporter. But I want to talk about the importance of first aid training for everyone, not just about what happened yesterday. Across town, James woke up late in his apartment. It was strange not to be at his post at the palace. In 3 years of service, he had rarely taken a day off. His face looked better, though still slightly red where the hot sauce had touched his skin. Lisa brought him tea in bed. "How do you feel?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Better," James said. "But strange. Everyone has seen the videos. My phone keeps buzzing with messages from friends and family." "You're famous now," Lisa said with a small smile. James shook his head. "I don't want to be famous for this." His phone rang. It was his commander again. "Thornton," the commander said without greeting, "the palace wants to know if you would be willing to meet with the nurse who helped you. They want to thank both of you formally." James hesitated. Meeting people officially was not part of his normal duties as a guard. He usually stood silently while important people walked by. "There's more," his commander continued. "The media office thinks it would help improve the image of the Queen's Guard if you did this. Show the human side of our service." "Will I need to speak?" James asked. The very idea made him nervous. He was trained to be silent and strong, not to give speeches. "Just a few words of thanks," his commander assured him. "Nothing complicated." James agreed, though he wasn't sure it was a good idea. By midday, the story had grown even bigger. News shows around the world were discussing what some were now calling the hot sauce incident. Some people defended Marcus, saying the guards were just tourist attractions, and everyone was overreacting. But most people sided with James. Social media was full of old videos showing tourists bothering royal guards over the years. People shared stories of other tourists who had been arrested for touching or bothering the guards. A hashtag started trending. #RespectTheGuard. In the police station, Marcus was allowed to watch TV in a common room. He saw his own face on the screen as reporters discussed his case. He heard strangers analyzing his character, calling him entitled and disrespectful. One psychologist even suggested he had narcissistic tendencies. Marcus turned away from the TV, feeling sick. This was not how his London vacation was supposed to go. He had planned to see Big Ben, ride the London Eye, and take funny pictures with the royal guards. Now he was facing criminal charges and worldwide shame, and he still didn't fully understand why what he did was so wrong. That afternoon, Emma arrived at a small side entrance of Buckingham Palace. She wore her best dress, a simple blue one that she had packed for nice dinners on her vacation. A palace worker met her at the door and led her through long hallways with beautiful paintings and fancy furniture. "This is amazing," Emma thought as she looked around. She had visited the public parts of the palace yesterday as a regular tourist, but now she was seeing the private areas where only special guests and workers were allowed to go. The palace worker stopped at a door and knocked. "Miss Chin is here," she announced. The door opened to reveal a nice room with comfortable chairs and a table with tea and small cakes. James was already there, sitting stiffly in a chair. He wore his regular clothes, not his guard uniform. Without the tall black hat and red coat, he looked like a normal young man. "Miss Chen," said an older woman who stood near James. "I am Lady Margaret, assistant to Her Majesty. Thank you for coming." She gestured for Emma to sit down. Emma sat across from James, feeling nervous. This was not how she had planned to spend her vacation. "First, let me thank you both," Lady Margaret said. "Guard Thornton, your dedication to duty was remarkable. And Miss Chen, your quick action prevented what could have been a more serious injury." James nodded but said nothing. Emma smiled politely. "The palace would like to recognize your actions," Lady Margaret continued. "We rarely make public statements about incidents involving the guards, but this situation has attracted so much attention that we feel we must address it." A man in the corner of the room stepped forward. Emma hadn't noticed him before. He wore a suit and carried a folder. "I'm Mr. Phillips from the media office," he explained. "We've prepared a statement about yesterday's events. We would like to include a quote from each of you, if you're willing. James looked uncomfortable. He was trained to be silent and strong, not to give quotes for press releases. Could I hear the statement first? Emma asked. She was surprised by her own boldness, but she wanted to know what they were planning to say. Mr. Phillips nodded and opened his folder. The statement condemns the attack, praises Guard Thornton's professionalism, and thanks you for your assistance. It also reminds visitors that the Queen's Guards are active duty soldiers performing an important role, not tourist attractions. Emma nodded. That sounds good to me. All eyes turned to James. He cleared his throat. What kind of quote do you want from me? Something about how you felt during the incident, perhaps, Mr. Phillips suggested. The public is very interested in the human side of the story. James thought for a moment. I could say that I appreciated Miss Chen's help, and that I was just doing my duty, as all guards do every day. Perfect. Mr. Phillips wrote something in his folder. Lady Margaret poured tea for everyone. As they sipped from fancy cups, the conversation became less formal. Emma learned that James had a wife and daughter. James learned that Emma was a nurse in a children's hospital in Singapore. May I ask, Emma said carefully, what will happen to the man with the hot sauce? Lady Margaret's face became serious again. Mr. Wilson will face the consequences of his actions through the legal system. The palace will not interfere with that process. Across London, Marcus sat in a small room with Miss Taylor, his lawyer. They were preparing for his court appearance the next day. The prosecutor has offered a deal, Miss Taylor explained. If you plead guilty, they will recommend a fine instead of jail time. But you will still have a criminal record. Marcus nodded slowly. The reality of his situation was clear now. There would be no easy way out of this. There's one more thing, Miss Taylor said, looking at her phone. The palace has just released an official statement about the incident. They specifically praised the guard and the nurse, and condemn your actions. Marcus felt smaller with each passing hour. The fun trip he had planned had turned into the worst mistake of his life. And now the palace itself, the actual royal family, was officially saying he was wrong. Will I ever be able to fix this? Marcus asked quietly. Miss Taylor put away her phone. That depends on what you do next, she said. How you handle yourself from now on will determine whether this incident defines your entire life or becomes a terrible mistake that you learned from. The next morning, Marcus stood in a London courtroom. The room was smaller than he expected, with wooden benches and a high desk where the judge would sit. His lawyer, Miss Taylor, stood beside him, looking serious in her black suit. The courtroom was packed with reporters. No cameras were allowed inside, but people took notes on phones and notepads. Marcus tried not to look at them. He stared at the floor instead, counting the lines in the wooden boards. A door opened, and everyone stood up as the judge entered. She was an older woman with gray hair pulled back tightly. Her face showed no emotion as she sat down and looked at her papers. Case number 4572, Marcus Wilson, charged with assault and disorderly conduct, a court worker announced. The judge looked at Marcus over her reading glasses. Mr. Wilson, how do you plead? Marcus took a deep breath. Miss Taylor had told him what to say. Guilty, Your Honor, he said in a voice that sounded strange to his own ears. The prosecutor, a man in a black robe, stood up and described what Marcus had done. He showed the court several videos of the incident. Seeing himself on the screen made Marcus feel sick again. In the video, he looked mean and stupid as he squirted the hot sauce at James. When it was his turn to speak, Marcus followed Miss Taylor's advice. I am truly sorry for what I did, he said, his voice shaking a little. I didn't understand the importance of the royal guards and their duty. I made a terrible mistake, and I deeply regret it. The judge listened without changing her expression. When Marcus finished speaking, she was quiet for a moment. Mr. Wilson, she finally said, what you did was not just a prank gone wrong. It was an assault on a soldier performing his duty. It showed disrespect not just for Guard Thornton, but for British traditions and institutions. Marcus nodded, looking at the floor again. However, the judge continued, I take into account your guilty plea and your expression of remorse. She paused, looking at her papers again. I sentence you to pay a fine of £2,000 and to perform 100 hours of community service, which you may complete upon your return to the United States with proof of completion to be submitted to this court. Marcus felt relief wash over him. No jail time. He could go home. The fine would take most of his savings, but it could have been much worse. As Marcus left the courtroom with Miss Taylor, reporters shouted questions at him. How do you feel about the sentence? Do you have a message for Guard Thornton? Will you apologize to the Queen? Miss Taylor pushed through the crowd, keeping Marcus close beside her. No comments at this time, she said firmly. In a quiet coffee shop across town, Emma sat with James and his wife, Lisa. Emma's flight back to Singapore was leaving that evening, and James had asked to meet her before she left. I wanted to thank you properly, James said, without the cameras and palace officials. Emma smiled and sipped her coffee. You don't need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same. No, Lisa said, touching Emma's hand. Most people wouldn't. Most people just watch or film when bad things happen. You stepped up to help. James nodded in agreement. I've stood guard for 3 years. I've seen thousands of tourists. Most are respectful, but some try to make us laugh or move. No one ever attacked me before, but no one ever helped me either. You were the first. Emma felt her face grow warm at their praise. How is your face now? She asked, changing the subject. Almost completely healed, James said, touching his cheek. The doctor says there won't be any lasting marks. Good, Emma said. And how do you feel about the court's decision? About Marcus's punishment? James thought for a moment. I think it's fair. He did something wrong, and he's paying for it. But his life shouldn't be ruined forever because of one stupid mistake. Lisa looked at her husband with pride. James has always been able to see both sides, she explained to Emma. It's what makes him a good father and a good guard. As they talked, people at nearby tables kept glancing at them. Someone took a photo with their phone. The hot sauce incident was still big news, and seeing 2 of the main people together was exciting. But in this quiet moment, away from the palace and the courtroom, they were just 3 people sharing coffee and conversation. Emma thought this might be the most normal thing that had happened since the whole incident began. 3 months later, Marcus sat in his small apartment in Ohio. The walls were covered with maps of different countries. A suitcase stood open on the floor, half packed with clothes. His life had changed completely since the hot sauce incident, as everyone now called it. When Marcus returned home from London, no one would talk to him. Old friends crossed the street to avoid him. His boss at the office supply store asked him not to come back to work. Someone even spray-painted hot sauce jerk on his car. For weeks, Marcus barely left his apartment. He ordered food to be delivered and spent hours reading comments about himself online. Most were mean. Some were threatening. A few suggested he move to a new town and change his name. But then something unexpected happened. A letter arrived from London. When Marcus opened it, he was shocked to see it was from James Thornton, the royal guard he had attacked. I am writing to let you know that I have forgiven you. The letter said in neat handwriting, what you did was wrong, but I believe people can change and learn from their mistakes. I hope you find a way to make something good come from this bad situation. The letter changed something in Marcus. He stopped hiding. He started his community service, cleaning up parks and helping at a food bank. At first, people were cold to him, but slowly they began to warm up as they saw him working hard without complaining. Marcus also started a blog called Learning from My Mistakes. He wrote honestly about what he had done and why it was wrong. He talked about respect for other cultures and traditions. To his surprise, the blog got thousands of readers. Teachers even used it in their classes as an example of how not to behave when traveling. Now, 3 months later, Marcus was packing for a new trip. not as a tourist this time, but as a speaker. A college had invited him to talk to students about cultural respect when traveling abroad. It wasn't the kind of fame he had wanted, but it was a chance to do something good. In London, James Thornton stood at his post outside Buckingham Palace. The hot sauce incident was old news now, but tourists still sometimes recognized him. Some even took selfies with him after his shift ended, and he was allowed to interact with people. The palace had made some changes since the incident. Guards now stood behind low barriers to keep tourists at a safe distance. Signs explained the importance of the guards and warned that disturbing them was against the law. Most visitors were respectful, reading the signs with interest and watching the guards from a proper distance. James didn't mind being recognized. His commander had even suggested he might be promoted soon, partly because of how well he had handled the incident. His daughter Sophia was proud to tell their friends at school that her daddy was the brave guard from the internet. In Singapore, Emma Chen returned to her job at the Children's Hospital. For a few weeks, patients and their parents wanted to take pictures with the hero nurse, but that attention soon faded. Emma was glad. She preferred caring for her patients to being in the spotlight. But some things had changed for her too. The hospital asked her to start teaching first aid classes for the public. "You showed how important these skills are," her boss explained. "Now you can help others learn them too." Emma also stayed in touch with James and Lisa. They sent her pictures of Sophia and updates about their life in London. Emma planned to visit them next summer during her vacation. As for the Devil's Breath hot sauce, it became briefly famous too. Several companies even tried to copy it and sell their own versions, but none were as hot as Marcus's original recipe, which remained a secret that he would never share or make again. The hot sauce incident had changed 3 lives forever. Marcus had learned about respect and consequences. James had shown that duty can include forgiveness. And Emma had discovered that sometimes stepping forward to help one person can inspire many others to do the same. In the end, what could have remained just another viral video of bad tourist behavior had become something more. It had become a story about mistakes and forgiveness, about duty and kindness, and about how people can grow and change when faced with the unexpected consequences of their actions.